media has now made that more palatable for people to take. One thing that was brought up in the past, just real quick, okay, so we just have it condensed there, where it says eliminate. The big ones, if you're going to take something away, the negative, as we call it, or a positive would be anything you would add to the diet. And you can debate, everyone's a little different. It seems like in general, most people, it's a little bit easier to take away or have a negative, like, hey, don't eat this, than to go, well, now you have to eat this. The positive part, when I say positive, meaning something you have to add in to what you're not doing, it's a lot tougher. It's kind of like if I've never exercised before at all, and someone says, oh, now you got to exercise 3 days a week. Well, that could be 3 extra hours that I'm not used to exercising, and now I have to add that in versus take something away. But the big ones, and they're pretty self-explanatory, some can be debated, but I mean, alcohol, it's just a lot of what they call empty calories. You know, I'm not against drinking alcohol or anything. I know there's a lot of studies actually that say 1 to 2 drinks, whether it's a glass of wine or 1 or 2 beers or 1 or 2 shots of whatever hard liquor, are actually good for cardiovascular, for your cardiovascular system. But then again, if you don't drink, just to add in the fact, those drinks per day isn't going to help you that much. But if you already do and you keep it at that level, it has been shown to be helpful for your cardiovascular system. The others, eliminate corn. That technically is a grain. I know some people, and I know corn on the cob tastes good, and there's butter on it. You say, hey, butter's good, that's healthy fat. It's still a grain that I know some books say it way better. I know a lot of all these paleo books, they have a whole sections on how that grain, which is corn is grain, can be very inflammatory for the body. And if you're in an inflammatory state, if you already have a lot of inflammation in your joints, you're gonna basically have flare-ups or have more pain. And I think from a physical therapy standpoint, this is what got me really interested in nutrition 15 or so years ago, and reading every book I could and practicing and listening and reading everything I could get my hands on, was that people would come in and I felt like we do a really good job of helping them with their movement patterns. And by the way, we have a 3-dimensional thing with that too, where there's carbs, fats, and proteins that come from 3s. When someone comes to me, we talk in terms of 3 dimensions of motion, where we say, oh, you want to go forward, back, side to side, rotate. I always thought, okay, we got the movement pattern down. Why are some people that seem to be about the same? They have the knee replacement, they have back pain, or they have shoulder problems. They're moving better 3-dimensionally. We have that down, but they're not healing the same. And yes, besides genetic factors and some other stuff that you can always throw on there, where they live by electrical wires or all that environmental stuff, or they're on their cell phone a lot, it came down to nutrition, where if they ate better, they seemed to do better. When I started talking to people, and it was against, again, I was low fat at the first, in the 90s, and I talked to these old farmers, and they heal up pretty well. So I'm like, well, what do you eat? And they're like, well, I eat basically grass-fed beef that they raised on their own farm. They ate butter. They ate chicken that ate grasshoppers that weren't eating corn and feces of other chickens and all this stuff you hear about. So they basically ate better food and they seemed to heal faster. So yeah, I guess you could say they ate corn too, but not everyone's perfect in your diet. And then dairy, and again, this is all if you want to eliminate, which I'm a cold turkey type person, so if there's something that it's like, this is bad, I'll make it poison bread. I used to eat loaves of bread each week, and when I found out, wow, that's not really good for me, not good overall, grains, I just cut it out completely. I'm not saying you have to do that, because people are like, I like my ice cream each day or whatever. So I'm just saying, if you want the fastest results and someone has a lot of inflammation and there's pain, which I know we deal a lot with here, or just certain problems, these are the things that if you eliminate and you stick with that, in a couple weeks, you will be much better. Most people seem to, whether it's their main goal or not, they'll lose up to 10 pounds that they sometimes didn't even know they had to lose because it just got that much cleaner, the whole diet. Then grains, I try to list off a bunch of them because people will start to go, what about oatmeal, what about this? And technically, and I know I put gluten in there too, that's always a big debate. Some people are gluten intolerant, some are gluten, they should never eat it because it'll just blow up inside. I know that's big lately too. Overall, I think some people, there's like any group of people, there's like a third that do very well on something, there's a third that, they do okay, and there's a third that should never eat it and should avoid it completely. I think that's with whatever it is, gluten or any of the stuff that we're talking about, the results are always going to vary. Again, that's why there's kind of a sliding scale of what proportion you would go with all this. And legumes, if you're strict, and again, I keep throwing out this word paleo, which has become very popular, they're avoiding beans and lentils. Again, that someone can say, well, wait, that's my protein source. If it is, then go with that. I'm not trying to change everyone's world, just here to educate and just get the discussion going. But in the truest sense, I definitely know I don't do well on that, so I basically eliminate those. But someone else could do quite well, and that could be a decent protein source for them. And then we put rice. Another way to say with the eliminate, there's always different ways people remember, is avoid the whites. So basically anything white, dairy, sugar, which I know someone called me out the last time, and I still didn't put it in there. It said, wait, you didn't put sugar in there, that's a major white. Okay, now I'm saying it. So you eliminate sugar, the rice is white, dairy is usually white, meaning like milk and all that stuff. The one white thing that's really good is cauliflower. Other than that, some people said, well, what about cauliflower? I'm just trying to get something how they ask. But the bad whites, which would be rice, breads, dairy, and potatoes and sugar. That's pretty much white. Unless you dye it blue, and then you have the dyes, and that's not good. And process, that ends up being. There was one acronym that came around a while ago. It's basically called SAD-CRAFT. And SAD stands for Standard American Diet, which has become pretty sad, like it says. And then the crab, it's just easy to remember. People remember stuff like that versus complicated words. But the C was for, I'm reversing the words here, carbohydrates, refined. So there's your CR. A for additives, and then P for preservatives. So basically the things that have the CRAP in them, you try to cut down, hopefully eliminate if you can, but at least reduce. The big one, basically I could summarize all of this. If you avoided the sugar and high fructose corn syrup, you're probably better off. But then we want to get a little more specific, because that would only be like the one minute talk. Oh, just avoid these two, you're good. But that would make a big difference. I put on here, and I'm just going to fix this just to see how okay. I didn't put on here, but this got brought. So for severe pain and inflammation, there's what's called the no nightshades diet, and basically no nightshade. So peppers and eggplants are part of that. And I know people of Italian heritage, they hate to hear this because eggplants, peppers, potatoes, tomatoes, tobacco's in there too, which is kind of self-explanatory on that one. But those cause a lot of severe pain and inflammation in the body. So when we see people, and there was Dr. Childers, his name, he was 93 years old when I got this sheet, like, I don't know how long ago, 10 or 20 years ago. So he's either really old or he's not here anymore. But he wrote this out, and he basically was, those are the big ones: eggplants, peppers, green peppers, red peppers, tomatoes, and potatoes. From my understanding, the nightshades that's a type of plant like eggplants and peppers are. And some people why do they call it? I am not sure. It's something with gardening. I should know that. I think I did at one point. And someone at one point, like, oh yeah, it's a nightshades type of, I don't know why exactly. But that's, yeah, there is a reason for the nightshade part of it. But that's for people, when I put it on before, it was for severe pain and inflammation. If you're looking for every edge, those seem to be ones where someone's like, well, yeah, I eat tomatoes every day, and I'm having this major flare-up. A lot of times it wasn't because they twisted their ankle. That was kind of what stirred it on. But what kept them inflamed and not healing is they kept eating a bunch of tomatoes. And once they eliminated that, it only took a couple days, and we're like, wow, I think this is working. again, it was a lot of trial and error for me, and I'm not saying it's always consistent every single time with people, but it's something in clinical setting that sometimes you would, any little tidbit, it's kind of like the lady, and I use this example, and I know some people will think, what, it's crazy. When I first started reading this and I was trying it myself, I knew, okay, a higher fat, more protein, a little lower carb, it's just better. And one lady's like, wow, I've been gaining all this weight, and it's probably affecting my back pain, and some of the stuff we were doing was helping with her back pain, but it just wasn't quite cutting it. And I'm like, what do you eat for breakfast? Because breakfast is really telling meal for a lot of people. They either say, well, nothing, and I skip it, or, well, I eat skim milk, and I have whatever sugared cereal, and fill in the blank of cereal, usually has a lot of sugar. But then I drink orange juice, and then I have toast, but I don't put butter on it, I put margarine. I was like, all right, so there again, a lot of sad crap, using that acronym again. And I said, do you eat bacon and eggs? She said, oh, I'd love to eat that, but I know you're not supposed to eat that many eggs, and then the bacon thing. And I said, just try it for a couple days. She was like, if I get fat because you told me to eat bacon and eggs, I'm coming back to get you. And I'm like, I don't think it can be any worse than all the sugar you're putting in your body. I'm like, just try it, that whole 2-week trial. And I think it was within a week, just over a week, it was 5 pounds that she had lost. And then she was like really happy. Of course, the happy hormones come out, or all those, cortisol is bad hormones, the other happy kind of adrenaline and norepinephrine and all that. But basically it changes the biochemistry. Even in the short week she was doing that, she was already happy. Plus the fats is satiating, so you feel fuller sooner, versus carbs that just kind of just burn through. So she was happy about that, and that's what started stirring like, oh. And again, that's why I told her, I'm not the dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm just recommending, or I'm not even recommending, I'm educating you on this. That's what I have to be careful on. But that seemed to work pretty well for her. So, jumping back to the pyramid, bottom line, bulk of dietary calories. Now, this says bulk is saturated fat. Here's where, and protein. The saturated fat and cholesterol even is for energy, satiation, and cell and hormone function. The cell hormone, or the cell walls are made up of primarily cholesterol. So eating cholesterol from eggs and other sources doesn't necessarily, in most people, raise your cholesterol. I know it's been touted that way, but there's a whole book called Cholesterol Myths, and it really spells out the biochemistry. Fairly simple, some complicated chapters of why just eating cholesterol isn't this bad. I used to do my own. I'm just an obsessive compulsive person on certain things. I will get blood tests. I still pay for this huge one every year. And when I added red meat in, which I was told, oh, that's going to make your cholesterol. So take away red meat for 3 months. My cholesterol actually got worse 3 months. So again, that's me. I'm not saying it will work for everyone, but if you do your own blood test, you would definitely know. Because a lot of times, the vitamin D is a big thing nowadays. Well, maybe a third, if we took a third of us, again, there's a third that probably are the normal range, a third that are low, and a third that might be kind of high. I shouldn't say a third, that's lower, that would be high. That would be more on a toxic level. But just for that example, kind of a third, and third. So some people are taking vitamin D, and a third of them are really, it's bringing it into normal range. But if you're already normal or high, that vitamin D isn't really helping you. It's extra stuff. So without a blood test, because people will say, well, how do I truly know? I know it's sometimes insurance will cover it anyway. A blood test truly does show it, because then the fact's right there. But without doing that, the simplest thing is energy. I think what got me more than anything is not just how I kind of felt, do the pinch thing, or the one thing people always say, well, we have a body fat measure. It's really nice, it's somewhat complicated, but it's simple to administer. It's body metrics, and we do like ultrasound, and it's basically, it shows on a graph, well, here's your fat thickness, here's muscle, and here's bone thickness. Obviously you want muscle thickness to be as big as possible, you want that fat one to be really narrow. But the best way to know if any of this is working is your energy. How do you feel after a meal? Immediately after, or definitely within an hour? I mean, if you're sleepy, groggy, mentally not there, you're not in the right ratio. And then the best thing from a body fat, in some of these we put, do your waist to hip ratio and blah, blah, blah. it's just how you look naked or how you feel. I know that's kind of a weird thing, but it's like when you jump, whatever keeps moving when you stop, you're carrying extra fat. So it's just an easy way.
Jiggle test.
The jiggle test. So,
do you need a pen?
Yeah, like that visual. You'll remember that one. It's a visual.
Salt?
But that saves a lot on body composition testing, which I mean, you can have it done almost anywhere, and you can get your own calipers now, but that's a pretty simple one to show. The fat, and this is what threw me off until I read this, what's called the Perfect Diet Health. See, they're getting Perfect Diet, in their book. Perfect Diet Health, and it was written by a husband and wife. One's like a microbiologist, PhD, one was an astrophysicist. So really smart people. Someone might go, so what? They were in totally different fields, they knew nothing about nutrition. Well, in their 40s, they started having all these like kind of severe problems neurologically and muscular-wise for 40-some-year-olds, which I'm in that group. And I'm like, wow, that would be weird to experience that. And, they were pretty major. And it wasn't so much genetic. They were still exercising quite a bit. Yes, they had high-stress jobs that they ended up leaving, so that was helped. But they were still having problems, and they boiled it down to nutrition, and they wrote this big, long book. The thing I got from that one is percentage, because when I heard that the ideal for most of us, again, vary, of eating would be 50 to 75% fat, I was like, oh, this is hard to swallow. I'm going to start eating like I do now, more coconut oil, and I put olive oil on everything, and I do eat the macadamias, and I don't mind eating the animal fat, and yes, I eat avocados, all this stuff in the healthy fat section there. But I thought, wow, 50 to 75% fat, that's what people, I think, when you visualize, when I said that, is a plate with basically a big, thick, fat steak with butter on top of butter with maybe a little vegetable. That's what I think people visualize with 50 to 75. What it actually is, and they made a great point of volume and percentages and what it looks like on the table on your plate, is if you have 50%, even 75% fat, you might have a 3 to 4 ounce piece of meat. Let's say we're going to the meat part, which is like the size of your hand, the palm, most people's palm. Unless you have really big hands or really small. And then a fairly decent sized salad with olive oil on it. Because you get the fat, which is going to be about 50, and then if you put, maybe you have a little, let's say, green beans as well, and you put butter on that, now you have the fat from the olive oil, the meat, and the butter, and then you have, that's about ratio, let's say 60%, 50-60% fat. But then the other 20 or so percent is carbs in forms of the vegetables. And then the protein is from the meat and a little bit of the vegetables. So you have basically 50% or so fat, 25% of it from carbs, and then 25% protein. I'm not saying that is the ideal, but most people seem to do well on this 50 to 75% of their daily intake from fat, which I know it's still, when I say that, it's like, ugh, I know people are going to perceive that way differently. I think what sold me is I would do, and I'm not much into like ultra endurance and all that, and I do exercise every day, but doing these longer races, I like to experiment. Like I said, I do my own blood test, or have it done, I should say, and then I would do things with longer and longer, and it made sense. The more fat, even someone with 6% body fat has enough fat calories that if they just started running now, they could go for a couple days and draw from their fat. But people that top off their carbohydrates, where that was a big thing for a while, it's like, oh, eat a big spaghetti dinner, drink your Gatorade during the race and all that. All you're doing is replacing the sugar you're burning from your muscles and liver, which you can only store like 900 calories, I believe, in form of sugar. So you have to keep replacing that. But if you can learn to have your body become fat adapted versus carbo or sugar adapted, you can go for a long time. So I started eating higher fat. I'm like, let's just see if this. I wasn't expecting anything, and I'm like, going to do longer races. It was 5 and 10 and 20 and so on. And sure enough, my meals beforehand looked like I would never have eaten before. I mean, typical fruit, vegetables, spaghetti, carbo loading. Now it's like meat, vegetables, coconut oil. I do these shakes that have a whole bunch of higher fat and some protein in them. and it really does work, because you're drawing from your fat versus just burning sugar.
Where do you get the proteins to put in your liver?
Okay, I was back and forth with this. I was using whey protein and I got away from it because getting dizziness stuff and vertigo. I thought, and now one of the side effects of whey protein I had read was like dizziness, so I thought, that's it, I'm taking it off. I think it was caused by other things. So now I'm back to getting whey protein, and there's, yeah, oh, what, correct, it's part that they used to just throw away, I guess, from cow's milk, yeah. That's why if you want it non-dairy, there's some non-dairy, like non-whey protein. You can get pea protein, you can get like vegetable
Soy.
protein or vegan protein, sprouts. Okay. Queen quinoa. Well, I know, I put it under the grain, and that's being very strict. If you're not as strict, you can incorporate that. Correct, it is. For grain, yes. And you can get a lot from a vegetable protein source that they now make powder for. And I use this Tara's Whey now, is going back and researching it, and that's what I buy at Veteran Cottage. And it is a whey protein, and I'm trying that out again. So it seems to be a more, has less.
That was neat, because, you know, you always heard have sirloin versus porterhouse or ribeye, because the fat in it. Is there fat in
My understanding, yes, and there again, I think if you really get, it depends on how detailed you get. I mean, the simple, like I said, if you do the jiggle test. Correct. And I've talked to a lot of people about that, and they seem to like grass feed, and they still top it off with corn at the end, from my understanding. So it's not 100% grass fed the entire run. Correct. So I don't think it's 100% unless you are a big hunter and you go out to where you get some wild game that's all they've ever eaten. And then this is, well, it's on topic, but it's out there a little bit, where there's people, different parts of the country, or world, I should say, that eat things that we almost don't ever like yak. Other things like, well, that's a big thing now too, is the crickets and, so, yeah, that's big now for protein. It's meant, a lot of people, they're getting into insects. That's part of their list where like the paleo people are like, yep, eat your nuts, seeds, and now they put insects as part of the plan. I would say yes.
The big price difference between regular cases of grass-fed beef. Now, beef's really good, and that, I guess, when you're getting that kind of product, it's pretty exclusively grass-fed. But you're not sure that the case.
I'd say if you, to be the safe side, we bought quarter and halves and full cows before.
So we're not looking for corn, is it a problem if the animals are, I've had people tell me that you don't have any of these cholesterol and all these issues if you eat beef, or beef problems if you eat the beef that's grass-fed. It's corn-fed and you know.
I think it just depends. I still wonder about that myself. I think it depends on how much that you eat. I mean, if you get there's like a rotation, there again,
Well, that's
with
the
the word
biggest
diet.
portion there, so.
Well, correct. But then that's, if you look, there's meat, fish, fowl, eggs. So the rotation part, I didn't say this yet, but let's say one day, and I know this is probably fairly impractical, but let's say you eat 3 meals a day, and Monday, I'm going to start on a Monday. We're all on these 7-day cycles, which your body really doesn't care about 7-day cycles, but we're set up financially and economically. It's like, all right, Sunday, we don't work, maybe, but Monday through Friday we do, and we have the weekends off. the body really isn't on that, but let's just say, so Monday, it's all meat days, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just for simplicity's sake,
Okay.
we eat grass-fed beef for breakfast, lunch, dinner with vegetables. The next day, you're not gonna eat that beef, you're gonna have fish, and then chicken, and then maybe eggs as your main protein source. So really by the time Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, by the time you get to Friday, if this was like a real systematic person, you would go back to the beef again. Otherwise, if you're always eating the same thing, yes. So like if you eat too much fish, what always gets brought up is, hey, what about the mercury levels? I heard now there's high mercury levels in tuna and other fish. Yes, that's a possibility. So if you rotate, you're still getting the protein if you eat meat. Because I always have to go back to that, some don't. But if that's your protein source, you would rotate that. So you're never really getting too much of a buildup or saturation point of sugar.
Sounds good. Now, there's people that won't eat anything with white fowl, white meat fowl.
Yeah,
All
and-
these darker meat fowls, I love. Bad and
You're supposed, that's why the metabolic typing thing, I would, like I'm a protein type, I eat more what I was drawn to anyway, the redder meat or the darker meat, versus if you're more of a carb type or mix, you go more white. And I have a picture, so I'll go back.
Okay, the biggest problem I can see is that, first of all, somebody has to set a goal for themselves. They have to gauge their ideal weight or fat to lean body composition.
Correct.
Okay? Then you can talk about what you can eat to get there. Okay? What's a good way to gauge an ideal weight?
Yes, so then I just need to look here, we would already put it all together. Okay, so I didn't quite, one, if you just go strictly by, put on this one on there, and then I can answer that in more detail. If we go for men, if your waist is less than 40 inches, you're doing better than average, believe it or not, which is still pretty sad. Females, if it's less than 35 inches. The body fat, to get more specific, because then that, someone could go, okay, well that's the circumference. And then we all know BMI, body mass index, has its flaws, because you can be really muscular and short and have a high BMI. And then there's opposite ends of the spectrum. So let's say you took your BMI, which everyone does, and the whole equation that way. You take your circumference, it still is only part of it, and that's where the body fat testing, whether you get like the calipers, and the minimum would be a lower body, a middle, and an upper body measurement. I know that's what we do with the body metrics. We have a 3-point system, and you could, and I've done in undergraduate a long time, we did 3, 7, and 12. Basically, it was so close, 12 was to 3 parts, that it was only like 1% off, plus or minus, so you got pretty darn close. For most people, and here's a kind of a philosophical question, what are you happy with? Or some people,
My situation is that I've never been above a 34 waist.
okay,
Okay?
so you fit that first category,
Yeah.
less than 40 inches.
That's the thing that bothers me is that I fluctuate so much within it, both measurement and weight.
When you say measurements,
I was-
what type of measurements? Like body fat
The
measurements?
waist measurement.
The waist,
My waist will go from between 31 and 34,
okay. I see.
and I'll gain, I say I'm around 145 now. I consider my ideal somewhere around 135. But as I get older, I'm starting to lose muscle mass. So what I'm looking to do is to eat and exercise enough so that I can replenish those proteins that are going away in the muscles so I can build them back up.
All right, so this is perfect. I can talk on this, and I have some of the most recent data again. Can I ask your age?
71.
All right, perfect. Man, I couldn't have pulled a better subject. Wow, that's right on. So I get this every couple months. Yeah, that's why, and then I'm always careful. Age and weight, you gotta be careful who you ask about. Well, yeah, that's true too. Basically, I get this every couple months. It's Master Trainer. He does a good job with the references of nutrition and different exercise journals. He's in his 70s now. So I think as I've read him over the last 20, 30, I think, he's gone from barely in his 50s and now he's in his 70s. There's some data now, over and over, he keeps putting this in every article that he writes.